Tyler Hawkins moved through his empty house like a specter, his footsteps silent on the hardwood floors he'd installed with his own hands 15 years ago. The military precision that had kept him alive through 12 tours of duty now served a different purpose, hunting prey in his own home. At 42, Tyler carried himself with the controlled grace of a predator. His graying temples and weathered face told stories of desert storms and mountain caves, of targets eliminated from impossible distances. But tonight, his pale blue eyes held a coldness that would have made his former Taliban enemies lose their composure. The house felt foreign without the warmth it once held. Pictures of happier times mocked him from every wall. His wedding day to Rebecca, their 10th anniversary in Maui, family barbecues where her laughter had been the soundtrack to his peace. Now he knew it had all been an elaborate performance. 3 weeks ago, he'd returned early from a private security contract in Colombia, expecting to surprise his wife of 16 years. Instead, he discovered text messages on her carelessly abandoned phone. Messages that painted a picture of betrayal so complete, so calculated, that it made the enemy ambushes he'd survived seem like child's play. Rebecca wasn't just being unfaithful. She was planning to take everything he'd built, everything he'd bled for. The house, his savings, his reputation. She and her muscle-bound lover had mapped out Tyler's destruction with the thoroughness of a military operation. But they'd made one critical error. They'd underestimated their enemy. Tyler had spent the last 3 weeks becoming invisible in his own life. He'd hired a private investigator named Cruz Valdez, a former Delta Force operator who specialized in matrimonial warfare. Cruz had provided photographic evidence, financial records, and, most importantly, a complete dossier on Rebecca's new boyfriend, Brad Kowalski, 34, originally from Detroit. 6'5", 260 pounds of steroid-enhanced muscle. He owned a chain of supplement stores that barely turned a profit, lived in a rented penthouse he couldn't afford, and had a gambling problem that had cost him his previous marriage. He was everything Tyler wasn't: loud, flashy, and desperate to prove his worth through intimidation. What Brad didn't know was that Rebecca had specifically chosen him as her weapon against Tyler. She'd researched her husband's psychological profile, understanding that his military mind would see Brad as a direct physical threat. She wanted Tyler to react violently, to give her grounds for a restraining order and a favorable divorce settlement. But Rebecca had made the same mistake every enemy combatant Tyler had ever faced. She'd assumed she understood him. Tyler's phone buzzed, a text from Rebecca. "Won't be home tonight. Girls' night with Monica. Don't wait up." Monica was Rebecca's sister, and Tyler had already confirmed she was in Phoenix visiting their mother. Another lie in a web of deception that stretched back months, maybe years. He opened his laptop and reviewed the timeline Cruz had assembled. Rebecca's affair had begun 8 months ago, but her planning went deeper. She'd been slowly transferring money to accounts Tyler didn't know about. She'd been documenting every argument, every moment of tension in their marriage, building a case that would paint him as an unstable veteran prone to violence. The irony wasn't lost on him. She was creating the very monster she claimed he already was. Tyler's reflection caught in the darkened window, a man stripped of illusions, reduced to his most essential elements. In the desert, they'd called him Ghost for his ability to appear from nowhere and vanish without a trace. Tonight, the ghost was coming home. He picked up his encrypted phone and sent a single text to Cruz. "Phase 1 is go." The response came immediately. "Target acquired. They're at the Meridian Hotel, room 412. Tyler smiled for the first time in weeks, but it wasn't an expression anyone would want to see. It was the smile of a predator who'd finally cornered his prey after a long, patient hunt. He walked to his home office and opened the gun safe hidden behind his Bronze Star and Purple Heart. Inside, carefully maintained and loaded, were the tools of his former trade. But tonight wouldn't require a rifle. Tonight called for something more personal. As he prepared for the confrontation that would change everything, Tyler felt the familiar calm that preceded every successful mission. Rebecca and Brad thought they were playing a game of deception and manipulation. They were about to learn they'd brought knives to a contest with a professional. The Meridian Hotel's elevator climbed silently toward the 4th floor as Tyler reviewed his intelligence one final time. Through Cruz's surveillance, he learned that Brad wasn't just Rebecca's lover, he was her co-conspirator in a scheme that went far beyond simple infidelity. Rebecca had met Brad at his supplement store 6 months after joining the upscale gym he sponsored. What began as flirtation had evolved into a calculated partnership. Brad needed money to cover his mounting gambling debts, and Rebecca needed muscle to intimidate Tyler into a settlement that would leave him financially ruined. But their plan had deeper layers. Rebecca had been secretly recording their conversations, painting Tyler as a volatile veteran who frightened her. She documented every raised voice, every moment of frustration, building evidence for the restraining order she planned to file. Brad would then escalate conflicts, forcing Tyler into situations where his military training might take over. The goal was simple: to ruin Tyler, legally and emotionally, and leave him with nothing. Rebecca's jaw dropped in shock, her eyes wide with fear. "Tyler? What are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Brad stood slowly, his massive frame unfolding like a threat. "You weren't invited, old man. Time to leave," he growled, his voice a low rumble. Tyler remained perfectly still, his expression neutral. "I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by and meet my replacement." Rebecca scrambled to gather the papers, but Tyler had already seen enough. Financial documents, property assessments, a timeline of fabricated incidents, the complete blueprint of his destruction. Brad took a step forward, his fists clenched. "You heard the lady. Get out or I'll make you," he snarled, his voice dripping with menace. Tyler's gaze flicked to Rebecca, then back to Brad. "You think you're tough, don't you? All those steroids pumping through your veins, making you feel invincible. But you're just a pawn in her game, Brad. A muscle-bound idiot who thinks he can intimidate a man who's seen real combat." Brad's face flushed with anger, but Tyler didn't flinch. "You're right about one thing, though. It's time for you to leave. But it's not me who's going anywhere. It's you," Tyler said, his voice cold and steady. Brad lunged forward, his fist swinging wildly. Tyler sidestepped the clumsy attack, grabbing Brad's arm and twisting it behind his back. Brad grunted in pain, but Tyler didn't let go. "You think you can take me? You're nothing but a pathetic, steroid-addicted bully, and now you're going to learn what real pain feels like," Tyler whispered, his voice like ice. Rebecca watched in horror as Tyler effortlessly overpowered Brad, her eyes wide with shock and fear. "Tyler, stop! You're hurting him!" she cried, her voice trembling. Tyler ignored her, his focus entirely on Brad. "You should have stayed out of my life, Brad, but now you're going to pay the price, and so is Rebecca, because I'm not the man you think I am. I'm the ghost in the shadows, and I always get my revenge," Tyler said, his voice a low growl. "This isn't what it looks like," Rebecca said, her voice taking on the tone she'd used during their marriage whenever she'd been caught in a smaller lie. "Really?" Tyler's voice remained conversational, almost curious. "Because it looks like my wife and her boyfriend planning to destroy my life through fraud and manufactured evidence." Brad stepped forward, flexing his shoulders in a display of intimidation that might have worked on someone else. "You need to walk away right now before things get ugly," he threatened. Tyler smiled, the same cold expression that had been the last thing many enemies had seen. "Define ugly, Brad." The bodybuilder's confidence flickered for a moment, some primal instinct recognizing the predator beneath Tyler's calm exterior. But ego and bravado overrode survival instincts. "I define it as you leaving through that door on your own, or me throwing you through the window," Brad said. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate the clarity, but I think there's been a misunderstanding about who's in control of this situation." He stepped closer, and Brad instinctively moved to block him, his massive fists clenching. This was the moment Rebecca had orchestrated, Tyler appearing as the aggressor, Brad defending himself, and everything caught on the hotel security cameras. But Tyler didn't strike. Instead, he spoke just loud enough for the recording device he knew Rebecca was carrying to pick up his words. "Tell me, Brad, does Rebecca know about your gambling problem? The one that cost you your marriage and put you in debt to some very unpleasant people?" Tyler said, his tone pointed. Brad's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Marcus Torino sends his regards. He's very interested in collecting the $120,000 you owe him," Tyler said coolly. The name hit Brad like a physical blow. Marcus Torino was Detroit's most feared loan shark, a man whose debt collection methods made headlines in the crime section. Rebecca looked confused, but Brad understood immediately. Somehow Tyler had found his deepest, most dangerous secret. "How do you—" Brad started, then stopped, realizing the implications. Tyler's smile widened. "I told you there was a misunderstanding. You thought you were the hunters in this little game." He turned toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Rebecca," he added. "Monica called. She wanted to thank you for the Christmas card you sent to Phoenix. Funny thing about phone records, they're admissible in court." As Tyler walked away, he heard Rebecca's sharp intake of breath and Brad's confused questions. They were beginning to understand that their perfect plan had been compromised from the beginning, but they had no idea how completely Tyler had turned their own trap against them. The parking garage beneath Tyler's office building had been chosen for a reason. Concrete walls, limited exits, and no surveillance cameras in the specific corner where he'd arranged to meet Brad. Some conversations required privacy. Brad's face contorted with rage, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. "You think you can scare me? You think you can stop me?" he roared, taking a menacing step forward. Tyler's smile never wavered, his eyes cold and calculating. "I don't think, Brad. I know. You see, I've faced down worse than you in the darkest corners of the world. Men who thought they could intimidate me, break me. But I'm still here, and they're not, because I understand something you don't. Size and strength aren't everything. It's about strategy, precision, and the willingness to do what's necessary." Brad lunged, his massive fist swinging wildly. Tyler sidestepped the clumsy attack, his movements fluid and precise. He grabbed Brad's arm, twisting it behind his back with a sharp, controlled motion. Brad grunted in pain, but Tyler didn't let go. "You're a bully, Brad, a steroid-pumped, muscle-bound fool who thinks he can intimidate his way through life. But you're nothing more than a pawn in Rebecca's game. And now you're going to learn what real pain feels like," Tyler whispered, his voice like ice. Brad struggled, trying to break free, but Tyler's grip was unyielding. "You can't do this. You can't just—" Brad's words were cut off as Tyler applied more pressure, forcing him to his knees. "I can do whatever I want, Brad, because I'm not bound by your rules. I'm not bound by anyone's rules. I'm the ghost in the shadows, and I always get my revenge," Tyler said, his voice a low growl. Brad's face was flushed with pain and anger, but he couldn't escape Tyler's hold. "You're a monster," he gasped, his voice filled with hatred. Tyler's smile widened, a chilling expression that sent a shiver down Brad's spine. "Maybe I am, but I'm your monster, Brad, and tonight, you're going to learn what happens when you cross me," Tyler said, his voice cold and unyielding. Brad's struggles grew weaker, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Tyler's grip never wavered, his eyes locked onto Brad's, a silent promise of the pain to come. "You should have stayed out of my life, Brad, but now you're going to pay the price, and so is Rebecca. Because I'm not the man you think I am. I'm the ghost in the shadows, and I always get my revenge," Tyler said, his voice a low, menacing whisper. The room was filled with maps, photographs, and documents spread across a large table, illuminated by the harsh glow of fluorescent lights. Tyler had spent countless hours here planning missions and studying targets. Now, it was dedicated to a new objective, dismantling Rebecca's carefully constructed web of deceit. He pulled out a chair and sat down, his eyes scanning the evidence crews had gathered. Financial records, surveillance photos, and intercepted communications painted a clear picture of Rebecca's betrayal. She had been meticulous, methodical, and utterly ruthless in her pursuit of Tyler's destruction. But she had underestimated him. She had underestimated the man she thought she knew. Tyler's phone buzzed with a new message from Cruz. Surveillance in place. Rebecca is at home, alone. Tyler nodded to himself, his mind racing with the next steps. He needed more information, more leverage. He needed to understand the full extent of Rebecca's plan and the people she had involved. He picked up his encrypted phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. The line rang twice before a gruff voice answered. Valdez? Cruz, it's Tyler. I need a favor, Tyler said, his voice steady and calm. Name it, Cruz replied without hesitation. I need everything you can find on Rebecca's lawyer. Background, associates, any dirt you can dig up. I need to know who I'm up against, Tyler said. Cruz was silent for a moment, then spoke. Consider it done. I'll have the intel for you by morning. Be careful, Tyler. You're playing a dangerous game, Cruz warned. I know the stakes, Cruz, but I can't back down now, not after what she's done, Tyler said, his voice filled with determination. He ended the call and turned his attention back to the table, his eyes scanning the documents once more. He needed to be thorough, meticulous, and utterly ruthless. He needed to become the monster Rebecca had created. He needed to win this war. Tyler's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unknown number. He opened it, his eyes widening as he read the contents. It was a photo of Rebecca, taken from a distance, showing her in a heated argument with a man Tyler didn't recognize. The man was tall, well-dressed, and had an air of authority about him. Tyler's mind raced as he tried to place the face, but it was no use. He didn't recognize him. He forwarded the photo to Cruz with a simple message. Who is this? Find out everything you can. Tyler leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with the implications. Who was this man, and what role did he play in Rebecca's plan? Tyler knew he had to find out, and fast. The war was escalating, and he needed every advantage he could get. He needed to stay one step ahead of Rebecca, to anticipate her moves and counter them before she could strike. He needed to become the ghost in the shadows, the unseen predator stalking his prey, and he needed to do it before it was too late. Steel-reinforced walls contained his most sensitive equipment, surveillance monitors, communications gear, and detailed maps of his target's daily routines. Cruz sat across from him at the tactical planning table, spreading out photographs and documents like a general preparing for battle. Brad's confirmed on the Mexico City flight, Cruz reported. Customs shows him clearing immigration 2 hours ago. He won't be coming back. Tyler nodded, studying the surveillance photos of Rebecca's activities over the past week. Without Brad's intimidating presence, she'd become increasingly desperate, making mistakes that revealed the full scope of her deception. She's meeting with 3 different lawyers, Cruz continued, shopping for someone willing to pursue the fraud case even without her muscle backing her up. Tyler examined a photo of Rebecca leaving a downtown law office, her face tight with frustration. Any takers? 2 of them showed her the door once they realized how thin her evidence was. But the third one, Harvey Gillespie, he's different, hungry, takes cases other lawyers won't touch. Cruz's tone was grave. Harvey Gillespie specialized in representing clients in high-conflict divorces, particularly those involving veterans with PTSD claims. His reputation was built on aggressive tactics and media manipulation, turning divorce proceedings into public battles that destroyed his opponent's reputation. Gillespie's already filed preliminary papers, Cruz said. Restraining order request, asset freeze, the whole package. He's betting that even if the evidence is weak, the court will err on the side of caution when it comes to protecting an abused wife from a dangerous veteran. Tyler felt the familiar coldness settling over him, the same detachment that had made him so effective in combat. What's his weakness? Cruz smiled grimly. His ego. Gillespie can't resist a high-profile case, especially one that might get immediate media attention. He's already talking to reporters about representing the victim of veteran domestic violence. Tyler studied the tactical situation. Rebecca had moved from manipulation to open warfare, using the legal system as her weapon. But like every enemy he'd faced, she'd revealed her position by attacking. "She's staying at her sister's house," Cruz continued. "Karen Walsh, divorced, 2 kids, lives in Riverside Heights. Decent neighborhood, but Karen's struggling financially since her divorce." Tyler reviewed the file on Rebecca's sister. Karen had been his ally during the early years of his marriage, someone who'd welcomed him into Rebecca's family. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing that Rebecca was now using Karen's financial desperation to hide from consequences. "Karen doesn't know the full story," Cruz noted. "Rebecca's told her that you've become violent and unstable. Karen believes she's protecting her sister from an abusive husband." Tyler closed the file, his decision made. Then Karen needs to learn the truth, but carefully. She's innocent in this. Cruz nodded. "You want me to set up a meeting, or are you thinking something else?" Tyler looked at the maps, weighing the risks and desired outcomes. He needed Karen to see through Rebecca's lies, but if he pushed too hard, she could double down on her support for her sister. It needed finesse, patience, and above all, indisputable evidence. "I'll handle it," Tyler said quietly. "She deserves the truth, and a chance to choose the right side before it's too late." Cruz leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he considered the implications. "You're going to bait her, make her think she's winning, and then pull the rug out from under her," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. Tyler nodded. "Precisely. We need to make her feel confident, make her believe she's in control. That way, when we strike, it will be devastating." Cruz chuckled, shaking his head. "You're a cold one, Tyler, but I like it. So, what's the first move?" Tyler turned back to the map, his finger tracing the route Rebecca took to her gym. "We start with something simple, a public display of vulnerability. I need you to leak information to the press, something that makes me look weak, desperate. A man on the brink, struggling to hold on to his sanity." Cruz pulled out his notebook, ready to jot down the details. "What kind of information?" "Something personal," Tyler said, his voice steady. "A story about how the divorce is tearing me apart, how I'm struggling to keep it together. Make it sound like I'm a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at any moment. But make sure it's subtle, not too obvious. We don't want to tip her off too early." Cruz nodded, scribbling in his notebook. "Got it. Anything else?" Tyler's eyes scanned the map, his mind racing with the next steps. "Yes, I need you to set up a meeting with Rebecca, somewhere public but private enough for a confrontation. A place where we can have a heated argument, but not so public that it looks staged." Cruz thought for a moment, then snapped his fingers. "I know just the place. There's a park near her sister's house, a secluded area by the lake. Plenty of people around, but enough privacy for a heated discussion." Tyler nodded, satisfied. "Perfect. Set it up for tomorrow afternoon. Make sure Rebecca knows I'll be there, and make sure there are plenty of witnesses, cameras, reporters, anyone who can capture the moment." Cruz stood up, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. "Consider it done. I'll make the arrangements and get the word out. Anything else?" Tyler turned to face Cruz, his expression serious. "Yes. Be ready for anything. Rebecca is desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. We need to be prepared for every possibility." Cruz nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'll be ready. You can count on me." As Cruz left the room, Tyler turned back to the map, his mind focused on the task ahead. He needed to be meticulous, precise, and utterly ruthless. He needed to become the monster Rebecca had created, but not the one she expected. He needed to win this war, and he needed to do it on his terms. Tyler kept his voice steady, projecting calm and control for the benefit of anyone watching. "Relax, Rebecca. I'm not here to make a scene. I just want to talk one last time before things get even uglier in court." Her eyes darted nervously around the cafe, making certain the nearby customers and a barista were watching. "I have nothing to say to you. Please leave before I have to call the police." "I wouldn't waste your time." Tyler replied, his tone gentle but pointed. "This is a public place. We can have this conversation without you twisting it into something it's not." Rebecca shot a trembling glance at the security camera, then back at Tyler. "You're making me uncomfortable. Can't you see what you've done to me?" she said, her voice just loud enough for those around them to take notice. Tyler took a slow breath, carefully keeping his hands folded on the table. "I'm sorry if you feel that way, Rebecca. But I think you've forgotten that there are two sides to every story. Someday, all of this is going to come out. People will see who's really telling the truth." Rebecca's voice quavered, her eyes shining with unshed tears, but Tyler could see the calculation behind her performance. "Why are you doing this to me, Tyler? Haven't you hurt me enough?" He shook his head, his voice firm. "You know what hurts? Lying to the people who trust you most, stealing from them, creating a fantasy and convincing everyone it's real. That's what hurts." A few patrons glanced over, uncomfortable, but Rebecca just leaned into the victim facade, clutching her phone. "Don't come any closer, I'm warning you." "I'm not moving," Tyler said, still seated, every gesture deliberate and non-threatening. "I just want you to remember all these people saw what actually happened here. They'll remember it too when the truth comes out. And I promise, Rebecca, it will." Rebecca blinked rapidly, her lips pressed tight. For a moment, only the whir of the espresso machine broke the silence. Tyler rose, nodding to her and to the onlookers, his voice low but full of meaning. "Take care of yourself, Rebecca. This won't end the way you think." He left the cafe, feeling the eyes of the customers, sympathy split between two stories, doubt planted in minds where Rebecca thought she'd built loyal allies. Outside, Tyler caught sight of Cruz watching from across the street, giving a brief signal. Phase 2 had worked. Now the real unraveling could begin. Rebecca would have to face the truth, with an audience this time, and she could already feel her grip slipping. Tyler stepped outside, knowing the cameras would capture his every move. He walked to his car, his posture relaxed, his expression calm. Inside, he felt a cold satisfaction. The trap was set, and Rebecca had walked right into it. He knew the police would arrive soon, and he was ready for them. He had done nothing wrong, and the witnesses inside would back him up. As he waited, he pulled out his phone and sent a quick message to Cruz. "Phase 3 initiated. Police en route. Stand by." Cruz's response was immediate. "On it. Backup in place. We've got this." Tyler leaned against his car, his eyes scanning the street. He saw a few patrons from the coffee shop watching him through the window, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. He nodded to them, a small, reassuring gesture. He wanted them to see him as calm, collected, and non-threatening. The police arrived a few minutes later, two officers stepping out of their cruiser with cautious expressions. Tyler recognized them from the local precinct, officers he had dealt with before. They knew his reputation, and they knew he was no stranger to conflict. "Tyler Hawkins?" the first officer asked, his hand resting on his holster. Tyler nodded. "That's me. I assume Rebecca called you." The officer's expression was neutral. "She reported a disturbance, said you threatened her." Tyler shook his head, a sad smile on his face. "I didn't threaten her. I had a conversation with her. In public. With witnesses. You can ask anyone inside. They'll tell you I was calm and respectful the entire time." The second officer spoke up, her voice firm. "We need to take a statement from both of you. Can you come down to the station?" Tyler nodded. "Of course, I have nothing to hide, but I want to make one thing clear. Rebecca is manipulating the situation. She's trying to paint me as the aggressor, but I assure you, that's not the case." The officers exchanged a glance, then nodded. "We'll take that into consideration. For now, let's just get your statements and sort this out." As they walked toward the station, Tyler felt a sense of relief. The trap was set, and Rebecca had taken the bait. Now it was just a matter of time before her lies unraveled and the truth came to light. He was ready to face whatever came next, confident that he had the upper hand. He had the witnesses, the evidence, and the truth on his side. And that was all he needed to win this war. She outsmarted herself, Tyler said quietly, scanning the evidence. All that maneuvering, and she's tangled her own lawyer into perjury if this goes to court. David nodded, tapping on highlighted transaction records. We have documentation showing Rebecca systematically moved funds from joint accounts and racked up debt in your name. Once the court subpoenas the bank records, it will expose her deception and financial misconduct. And the credit fraud? Already in motion. Once the hidden accounts come to light, I'll press for the appointment of a forensic accountant. It won't just ruin her credibility, it could lead to criminal charges, David replied with satisfaction. Tyler sat back, his mind whirring with each calculated step. So while Gillespie is telling the press that I'm melting down and turning dangerous, we just keep feeding him rope. Let his greed drive them right where we want. David closed his laptop, the beginnings of a smile tugging at his lips. Exactly. And meanwhile, you keep doing what you're doing. No outbursts, no contact, nothing that can be twisted into aggression. Just cold, rational self-preservation. Tyler considered the way Rebecca had weaponized public sympathy, transforming herself into a martyr in every social setting. Now, with each failed accusation, every lie exposed, the cracks in her story would widen. I think it's time we inform Rebecca's sister Karen about the financial realities, Tyler said quietly. She needs to see what her loyalty is costing her before Rebecca drags the whole family down. David agreed. I'll prepare a letter for Karen's attorney. We'll attach the financial documents and invite her to review them. That should be enough to make her question Rebecca's story. As soon as the judge sees the paper trail, Rebecca's going to lose her support system, Tyler said, his voice steel-edged with resolve. She wanted a monster. I'll show her how monsters win, not by brute force, but by letting the truth destroy her from the inside out. David gathered the files, confidence in his eyes. We're almost there, Tyler. Stay sharp. Tyler simply nodded, already strategizing his next moves as St. Louis's skyline stretched beyond the window, the city below oblivious to the quiet battle unfolding above. Tyler's eyes narrowed as he read the message, his mind already formulating a plan. Cruz will handle the surveillance and intel. We need to know every move Torino makes, every contact he has with Rebecca. We need to anticipate their next steps and stay one move ahead. David looked at Tyler, concern etched on his face. Tyler, this is dangerous. You're talking about going up against organized crime. We need to involve the authorities. Get protection. Tyler cut him off with a sharp gesture. No, this is personal. Rebecca brought this to my doorstep. I won't involve innocent people in my fight. I'll handle it my way. David sighed, knowing there was no changing Tyler's mind when he was in this state. All right, but be careful. These people don't play by the rules. Tyler's smile was cold and calculating. Neither do I. He turned back to the window, his mind racing with the next steps. He needed to gather more information, find out exactly what Torino knew and what he planned to do. He needed to turn the tables, make Torino and his men the hunted instead of the hunters. Tyler's phone buzzed with a new message from Cruz. Surveillance in place. Schirano is meeting with Rebecca at her sister's house tonight. We can intercept the conversation, gather more intel. Tyler responded quickly. Do it. I want to know everything they say, every detail, no matter how small. He turned back to David, his expression determined. We need to move fast, accelerate the divorce, expose Rebecca's lies, and make sure the court sees her for what she really is. A manipulator, a liar, and a danger to anyone who crosses her. David nodded, gathering his files. I'll get started on the motions. We'll file them first thing in the morning. But Tyler, be careful. You're playing a dangerous game. Tyler's smile was chilling. I know, and I always win. As David left the office, Tyler pulled out his encrypted phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. The line rang twice before a gruff voice answered. Valdez. Cruz, it's Tyler. I need your help. We have a situation with organized crime, and I need to know everything about Marcus Torino and his operations. I need to know his weaknesses, his vulnerabilities, and how to exploit them. Cruz's voice was steady and calm. Consider it done. I'll have the intel for you by morning. Be careful, Tyler. These people don't mess around. Tyler's smile was cold and unyielding. Neither do I. And this time I'm not just fighting for my life. I'm fighting for my honor, my reputation, and everything I've built. And I won't back down until every last one of my enemies is destroyed. I've survived war zones you can't imagine, and I didn't get there by paying other people's debts or running from threats, Tyler said, his eyes locked on Torino. I respect your reputation, but this isn't your field to play in. Brad Kowalski made his own choices, and so did my wife. I don't owe you, nor do I intend to pay a cent. Torino's silver eyebrows arched with a trace of amusement. You speak boldly for a man in your position, Mr. Hawkins. Most people sit in that chair and start by asking for mercy. Tyler shook his head. I'm not most people, Marcus. I've brought proof, documents showing the timeline of Brad's disappearance and communications between Rebecca and Brad. You'll see I had nothing to do with whatever Brad did to get in over his head. With a nod, Tyler slid a file across the table. One of the guards took it, flipping through its contents with wary professionalism. Vincent Scarano watched, his knuckles whitening but his expression unreadable. Torino examined a few pages himself, then looked up. Those calculating eyes narrowed. Say I believe you, Mr. Hawkins. That still leaves me with a problem. Money gone and a hole in my operation. Then you should be looking for Brad, not me. Or you could consider this an opportunity to demonstrate discretion, Tyler countered smoothly. My wife used you. If you fall for it, if you escalate this, you're just another pawn in her game. I expected more from someone with your reputation. Scarano bristled, but Torino held up a hand. His gaze locked with Tyler's, a silent assessment between predators. You say you're not a paying target. That brings me to my next question. What's to stop me from using you as an example anyway? You're a long way from home, Mr. Hawkins. Tyler smiled, just enough to show steel. Because I'm not alone, Marcus. Your establishment is under surveillance, inside and out. You try something, and law enforcement gets a file with all your recent movements, associates and ledgers, courtesy of a sealed packet. All I've ever wanted is to be left alone. If you want to escalate, understand we're not playing by divorce court rules anymore. If you want to walk away, do so, and you'll never hear from me again. But cross the line, and I'll treat you like every other threat I've neutralized in my past. Torino regarded Tyler for a long moment, icy silence filling the air. Finally he spoke, voice measured, almost respectful. You're more trouble than you're worth, Hawkins. Maybe it's time someone taught your wife about real consequences. Tyler inclined his head. On that, we can agree. I've got no quarrel with you, Marcus. We were both manipulated. Walk away, and there's no war. Torino nodded curtly, glancing again at the file. I'll consider it. For now, the matter's on hold. But if you lied to me, you won't get a second audience. As Tyler stood, Scarano's eyes followed him, but neither man moved to stop him. Outside in the cooling Detroit dusk, Tyler exhaled slowly. He'd survived the first round with a crime boss. Now, it was time to bring the fight back to Rebecca and end this game for good. Then you'll lose everything you've ever loved before you even know you've started a war, Tyler said quietly, his voice absolute. You won't see me again, Marcus, but you'll know what's happening as it all comes unraveled. I suggest you reflect on how many enemies you've made in your career. Nobody would ever suspect me. The silence in the room grew deeper, heavy with the realization that the rules had changed. Marcus Torino looked from the photographs to Tyler, seeing in his eyes the kind of resolve that only surviving years of warfare could create. Scarano carefully let his hands drift back to his lap, every movement slow, controlled. The laser dot remained, unwavering, a silent promise. "I underestimated you," Torino finally said, voice raspy but even. "I'm not used to being on this side of a negotiation." Tyler nodded once. "No one is until they meet someone who's truly prepared to finish what gets started." Torino closed the folder and set his hands flat on the table, eyes never leaving Tyler. "It's over, Hawkins. You have my word. I won't make a move against you or your property. I'll let your wife know my business is finished. You're not a debt collector's concern." "See that you keep it that way," Tyler replied, voice soft but pressing, "and you'll never hear from me again." Without waiting for another word, Tyler turned and walked out, maintaining calm as he passed Scarano and the other men, each of whom looked at him with new, uneasy respect. Outside, as the sun finished setting over Detroit's skyline, Tyler radioed Cruz. "Phase complete. Torino stands down, full withdrawal." "Copy that," Cruz replied, voice steady but carrying relief. "Heading back to St. Louis?" "Not yet," Tyler answered. "One last thing to handle first. Rebecca." With the threat of organized crime neutralized and his message delivered, Tyler felt the tension of months ease from his shoulders. It was time to return home and finish what Rebecca had started, on his own terms and without mercy. Rebecca's voice shook with anger and desperation. "You're destroying my life, Tyler. Everything I've done, I did to protect myself from you. You're the one who's unstable, who's dangerous." Tyler's voice remained calm and measured. "Rebecca, you created this monster. You wanted a predator to justify your betrayal. Now you have to face the consequences of your actions. You involved organized crime in our personal dispute. You threatened my life to collect debts I don't owe. You crossed a line that put me in mortal danger. And now you're paying the price." Rebecca's voice rose, hysterical. "You can't do this to me, Tyler. I won't let you. I'll go to the police, the media, anyone who will listen." Tyler's smile was cold and unyielding. "Go ahead, Rebecca, tell your story. But remember, I have witnesses, evidence, and a team of lawyers ready to expose your lies. You're the one who fabricated evidence, manipulated witnesses, and conspired with criminals. You're the one who's facing criminal charges and a lifetime of regret." Rebecca's voice broke, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Tyler, don't do this. I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Just don't destroy me." Tyler's voice was firm and unyielding. "You should have thought about that before you tried to destroy me. You made your choices, Rebecca. Now you have to live with the consequences. And so do I." He ended the call, his expression grim. Rebecca had played her final card, and it had been a bluff. Now it was time for the final phase of his plan, the reckoning. Tyler turned to Cruz, who had been monitoring the conversation. "It's time to end this. Make sure the evidence is ready, the witnesses are prepared, and the media is waiting for the story of the century." Cruz nodded, his expression determined. "Consider it done. Rebecca's world is about to crumble, and there's nothing she can do to stop it." Tyler stood, his mind focused on the task ahead. He had fought long and hard to expose Rebecca's lies, to protect himself from her manipulations, and to ensure that justice was served. And now, it was time to deliver the final blow. The reckoning was at hand, and Tyler was ready to face whatever came next. He had the truth on his side, and that was all he needed to win this war. If it's not, Rebecca's leverage vanishes, and every claim she's made in court crumbles, David assured him. "I'll file the emergency motion for a court-ordered paternity test first thing. If she refuses, that alone speaks volumes to the judge." "Good," Tyler said, his tone like steel. "No more secrets, no more games." As Tyler hung up, his mind cycled through the emotional wreckage Rebecca had left behind. Betrayal, lies, ruined reputations, the looming threat of organized crime, and now the potential of being tied forever to a child born from deception. The years of military discipline and tactical planning had brought him this far. Now, all that remained was to see his plan through to its conclusion. He sent a text to Cruz. "Situation update. Rebecca claims pregnancy. Investigate her recent medical visits. priority high. Cruz replied at once. Already working on it. If she's been to an OB/GYN, we'll confirm everything. I'll dig into Brad's last known contacts too. We'll have answers fast. Tyler drew a deep breath, feeling the storm inside abate just a little. Whatever Rebecca had tried, whatever lie she might attempt next, he was ready. For her confessions, her manipulations, and even for her final desperate attempts to salvage her ruined life. He went to the window and looked out over the quiet St. Louis night. Rebecca had started a war, one she thought would be fought in shadows and secrets, but soon all of it would come out, in court and in public, and there would be no more hiding. He would face fatherhood or freedom on his own terms. Either way, Rebecca would answer for everything. When I realized you were trying to kill me, Tyler replied, his voice steady and calm. When I understood that you were willing to destroy everything I'd built, everything I'd sacrificed for, just to satisfy your greed and your ego. When I saw that you were willing to involve innocent people, to manipulate and lie and cheat, all to serve your own twisted purposes. That's when I became cold, Rebecca. That's when I became the monster you created. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, but Tyler felt no pity for her. She had brought this on herself, and now she had to face the consequences of her actions. You can't do this to me, Tyler, she whispered, her voice breaking. I'm your wife. I'm the mother of your child. Tyler's expression didn't change. You're not the mother of my child, Rebecca. You're a liar and a manipulator who tried to use a pregnancy to gain leverage in a divorce. You're a criminal who stole from me, who conspired with dangerous people, who tried to destroy my life. And now, you're going to pay the price for your crimes. Rebecca's tears turned to sobs, but Tyler remained unmoved. You're pathetic, he said, his voice cold and unyielding. You thought you could outsmart me, outmaneuver me, outplay me. But you were wrong, Rebecca. You were always wrong. And now it's too late for you to do anything about it. He stood, signaling the end of the conversation. I won't be back, Rebecca. I have nothing more to say to you. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. Or in your case, die with them. As he walked away, Tyler felt a sense of finality, of closure. Rebecca had been a part of his life for so long, and now she was gone, replaced by a stranger who had tried to destroy him. But he had fought back, and he had won. He had protected himself, his reputation, his future, and he had done it all without losing sight of who he was, of what he stood for. He stepped out of the visitor room, leaving Rebecca alone with her thoughts, her regrets, and her tears. He had no more use for her, no more time for her. She was a chapter of his life that was finally, mercifully, over. But instead, you chose destruction over honesty. And now, I have nothing left to give, except the truth of your own actions. Tyler's voice was steady, yet underneath it, Rebecca could feel the sharp ache of finality, an ending written not by fate, but by choice. Rebecca let out a shaky breath, staring at the man she had once vowed to love, realizing too late that she had always underestimated his strength, not just as a soldier, but as a survivor. Her tears fell silently, mingling regret with fear. But Tyler gave her nothing more. He stepped back from the glass, his eyes never leaving hers, that last vulnerable connection dissolving into the empty space between them. Goodbye, Rebecca, he said with a finality that echoed through the silent visitor room. As he turned and walked away, the heavy door closing behind him, Tyler felt the burden of betrayal shift off his shoulders. What had once been love and hope had become memories, some bright, most shadowed. But above all, he felt freedom. Justice had been served, not through vengeance, but by letting truth and consequence bring about their own reckoning. Rebecca remained seated, alone and defeated, left only with memories of what she had lost, and Tyler, finally, walked out into the clear St. Louis morning, ready to start over, knowing he had survived the war brought to his own home. The sun warmed Tyler's face as he stood in the backyard, the scent of pine and fresh air filling his lungs. He had come a long way from the man who had once hunted shadows in his own home. The past was a lesson learned, a battle won, and a future to be embraced. Inside, the house hummed with the quiet sounds of a new beginning. The walls held no echoes of betrayal, only the promise of a life rebuilt on honesty and strength. Tyler had chosen this place for its solitude, its beauty, and its distance from the memories that had once haunted him. He walked back inside, the cool morning air nipping at his heels. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, a small luxury he had come to appreciate. As he poured himself a cup, he thought about the years ahead. No longer bound by the chains of Rebecca's deceit, he was free to forge his own path. Tyler's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an old friend, someone he had served with in the military. The invitation to a reunion in St. Louis, a chance to reconnect with those who had shared his past battles. He smiled, replying with a quick acceptance. It was time to face the future with the same courage and determination that had seen him through the darkest nights. As he sipped his coffee, Tyler looked out the window, watching the world wake up around him. The mountains stood tall and proud, a testament to the endurance of nature and the resilience of the human spirit. He had fought long and hard to reclaim his life, and now he stood on the precipice of a new chapter. The ghost was laid to rest, and in its place stood a man who had faced his demons and emerged stronger. Tyler Hawkins was ready to embrace the future, to build a life filled with purpose and meaning. He had survived the war, and now he would thrive in the peace that followed. With a final glance at the rising sun, Tyler turned away from the window, his heart light and his spirit unbroken. The past was behind him, and the future was his to shape. And as he stepped forward, he knew that he would face whatever came his way with the same unyielding strength and determination that had defined him through the darkest times. The end.